do we think about planning in a different way?
It seems overwhelming, right? I don't know what the future is, but I'm supposed to plan for it.
Yeah.
Like, what gives here? And I get that. Yeah. What makes, I think, appreciating the fact that life is not linear should hopefully make it exciting instead of creating too much anxiety. Because if everything was spelled out for us, I don't think we would enjoy it as much as most people do.
Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations and let's transform your financial life together. Hello, and welcome to the new year. This is the first new show of 2025, and 2025 is off to quite a start. I can't really do this show without saying something to my fellow Angelinos out here in LA about how heartbreaking everything is right now. And, I just want to provide sort of an overall kind of sadness that I feel for myself, for everybody. I grew up in Pacific Palisades for a bit. I was fortunate enough to move there and go to junior high and part of high school there at a high school that is, I don't think, any longer there, most of it anyway. And that was my favorite place on earth. I spent the next 20 years living in other states, hoping to someday get back there and to see the devastation there and in Altadena. We lived in Glendale for quite a long time, too. So in both areas, I know so many people who've been affected. I'm in Malibu. Malibu's been affected multiple times this year, actually. But I'm fortunate enough, I guess, to be on the far western end where I still have a house. Three of my best friends don't have two lost homes, one lost her business. It's just a really, really, it's an extraordinary time. And I don't have the right words to really express the feelings. I think everyone is grieving, whether you personally lost a home or a business or not. We're all sort of in a weird grief state where it's hard to process everything. So I just want people to understand that everybody is, including myself as I do this show, am thinking about all of this and all of you, and sending love and prayers and intentions for everything to resolve in the best way possible for everyone. So there's a part of me that felt weird talking today about, regular money things, but there's also a part of me that realizes that these tragic events have an enormous impact financially, and it is in part a money event. And so I have a terrific guest on today who I was really looking forward to having on, and we might be talking about some things we didn't plan to talk about because of this, but I think it'll be a really helpful show to help people maybe see new things about how they might be feeling about their money right now, because right now is a potentially stressful and to some extent terrifying time for people from a financial standpoint. So, I'm going to get started. I'm going to read James Alexander's bio, and we're going to talk about a lot of relevant ideas around money and planning. And so I'm going to jump in and get started. Let's see. Here we go. James Alexander is a certified financial planner and partner with Edge Financial Advisors. He co-hosts Ed's Edge, a show geared toward regular, everyday investors. With over a decade in finance, James specializes in guiding families, business owners, and consultants in financial peace. His approach integrates sound financial strategies with an understanding of the psychology of money, recognizing how emotions influence decisions. James, based in Chicago with his family, is passionate about empowering clients to navigate finance confidently, emphasizing the importance of emotional well-being in financial planning. And I think anybody who understands the psychology of money like James does is a perfect guest to start out this year. So welcome, James.
Thanks so much for having me. I really look forward to our conversation, and I echo your sentiment about those out there where you are. It's certainly tragic, and we're keeping a good thought out here in the Midwest.
Yeah, thank you. You know, you bring up a good point that is, there's been, on the one hand, so much heartbreak in the devastation that's around us. And yet there's also this outpouring of support that's actually very heartening. I mean, it has felt really wonderful to see donations pouring in from all over the country. My friends have a lot of friends in New York, and they're like fascinated by how much people are sending, and everyone here, even the people who've lost their own homes, are out there trying to help other people. And there's a great community connection that people are feeling, which is always really, really helpful in times like this. So thank you. And, all the support from all around the country is so helpful. So thank you. Okay.
You bet.
So let's talk a little about what you do. And I kind of love the fact that you're helping everyday folks, and how you do that. And, why don't you give us just a little extra background, because your bio was short.
Sure thing. Yeah. So in a nutshell, I'm a financial advisor. I'm a certified financial planner. What do? I help your everyday investor, like you said, help them primarily get to and through retirement on their terms. And I'm going to use a caveat with peace, as I alluded a little bit in that bio of, retirement, especially, it's a scary topic for some. It's ignored by others. I strongly feel, regardless of, what you've been able to build up, we all deserve that financial peace in that next chapter of our life. And even though I use the word retirement, I actually like to rephrase that word sometimes, Michelle. I'd like to talk about what's next or new chapter, because a lot of people have this preconceived notion of, retirement's what happens when I get old and then that's it. And so I have people that I've helped who've retired in their 40s, and I've had people that absolutely love doing what they're doing and don't stop until their late 70s. And so I just help them through all financial planning topics, not just managing their investments. And that's what I've found passion about over the 16 years I've been doing this.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great. We need people to help guide people, because you said one thing that really struck me, which is some people avoid it. And I think a lot of people actually just avoid money in general. I mean, that's a lot of what the show is about. And but retirement in particular, I do remember being in my 20s and getting my first real salaried job. And it was so far away. I mean, it just felt like, I'll get to it. It doesn't matter right now. A giant mistake, obviously, that I didn't recognize, but still. It's the avoidance around money and thinking about these things is a huge issue. And so if you are avoidant out there, I hope you're listening to this, because I think, unpack that for me. Why do people avoid this topic?
Oh, great question. So, to your point, you are not alone by not thinking about retirement in your 20s. There's actually studies, I'm pretty fascinated by this, is why do we not think about it early on? It's not because necessarily we're irresponsible. There might be a piece to that, but the bigger argument is you're 25 years old. Imagine yourself at 65 years old. It's hard to do. I can't picture that. I'm worried about, getting married or having a family or how to save for a house. Don't talk to me about retirement. That's so far down the road. So that's the first point. But even as we evolve and mature as human beings, of course, across our life, we avoid it because what I've learned is there's a sense of, I'm going to use the word shame, of I'm supposed to know this, and I'm now 45 years old and I don't have a budget and I haven't saved enough. I know that. And if I go to somebody, I'm going to be scrutinized, and I don't want that feeling. And so there's this sense of like, I'm doing something wrong and I know it, and I don't need anyone else to tell me it because it's going to make me feel worse. When the reality is, and I can speak this firsthand working with hundreds of people over the course of my career, is very few know it.
Yeah.
And the reason they don't know it is it's not taught in schools. It's not, we don't know what we don't know. We learn about all these other topics unless our parents did a good job of educating us, or we took on that burden early on because of our own individual passion. We don't know it. And that's normal. And I think taking a step back and realizing, look, it's not too late now. I want to get educated on this. I want to learn how I can better myself for my future while still enjoying today. There's a balance there in my mind. That's if we have that notion of this will be okay. I just need to attack it. I can't tell you how many times people, after they get over that hump, a couple months later, they just have this, wow, I have a game plan. At least I'm starting somewhere. I've accomplished that. It's a new year, right? Make it a New Year's resolution.
Yeah, great point. I mean, this is, I would encourage people as well. This is your year. Make 2025 the year you change the way you operate, financially. And that's great. I agree with you with the avoidance and makes total sense why people are doing it. There's enough messaging out there now, so I think people are hopefully understanding, we aren't taught anything about money. Why should we know? I mean, we learn by making millions of mistakes throughout our 20s and 30s. And then suddenly in our 40s, we're wishing that we learned more. So it's not fair and it's not okay. And people should be marching in at an early age to people like you and saying, okay, help me, because nobody else has helped me along the way. I think also the messaging around financial, maybe, the financial planning world has sort of sent a message that you should already be somewhere, before you come to us, which I think is changing, but I think that's a little contributory.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the statistics around what people have saved and all that, I think some people get a little scared by it because of the whole comparison. And I hate when people compare against others. I talk a lot about playing our own financial game and ignoring the noise out there. Learning the fundamentals, some of the very basics of money management and having a budget and sticking to that budget and saving and investing and all those pieces. But playing our own game, I think, is critical, because we are inundated by news headlines and apps on our phone and the neighbor conversation and all these, we look at that house and what they have and I don't have that and all these pieces, and it gets us in this rat race instead of actually being laser focused on what we want and earmarking our energy there. I think that is where so many people that are able to do that just have this financial peace around, their world and their financial life. And I think that too is just something that we all have to constantly be reminded of. And that's where I think I step in, hopefully sometimes, of being that accountability partner of remember why we did this. That hot stock tip that your neighbor's talking about means very little to what you were trying to do. They're two different games we're playing. So
yeah, that's important. It's important because we can be chasing a lot of squirrels with our money, just like we can with anything else. And you're right. Today, between the news and social media and everything else, you do feel constantly like you're missing out on, some super important investment opportunity. And so I think that's great. I think keeping yourself in your own lane, heading toward your own targets is incredibly important as well. And, I feel like when you talk about budgets, especially, people immediately feel like, I think their whole bodies just kind of constrict when they hear that word. And it feels like, oh my gosh, if I do the things he's talking about, I'm going to have this super restricted life. I'm going to, have to be constantly checking my money. And that just has a lot of negative connotation. But the reality is it liberates you. And maybe you can speak a little to how that is, because once you figure that out, it's like, oh my God, you do find more peace. I love the word peace associated with this. Last year, my favorite term was financial well-being, but I don't know. I'm liking financial peace a lot. I haven't heard that used.
Sure. Yeah. No, so going to your question, right? When I create a budget, I feel like I'm going to be strapped and this is not going to be fun. So we try to make things fun here at our company. I tell people, I'm going to buy you a bottle of wine. You and your husband are going to go, and here's my ask. On Friday night, you're going to spend 1 hour just writing down all your expenses for the last, and you're going to do it over this bottle of wine, just to make it a little less painful, we'll call it. But what does it actually do after you create a budget is with the right strategies for that individual, what motivates them. Oftentimes it's automate anything that can be automated so you don't think about it, paying the bills and moving money around, things of that nature. But also I create for every single one of my clients and myself and my wife included a guilt-free spending account. It's titled Fun Money Account. That money goes in there every single month. And that's my guilt-free spending. And I know everything else is accounted for, and I can see this money keep adding up and up and up, and then I can use it throughout the month as I see fit. And that's that freedom you're talking about of I am giving myself permission to spend this money because I have everything else taken care of in being that responsible a person. So I think for those listening, if you haven't done a budget, I highly encourage it. It's very freeing, more so than you might think. From hearing from others.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great idea too. A great tip to have that. And I think giving people permission for that is good, because I also think a lot of people feel like any excess, beyond the expenses needs to go straight into some kind of savings or investment or something. But that's obviously a line item on your budget, which is great. I mean, and that's what I think people need to know too. You create your own budget categories. That's for you to figure out, and if you want to include things like that, then that's your prerogative. I do feel like people feel like they have to follow some kind of a structure and formula, and there's no room for them to accommodate their own lifestyle into that.
No wiggle room. Yeah. And, it makes me think of one other very, very important part that I've learned about helping others with budgets is when you evaluate your own budget, it's going to be hard to do this without judgment at first. But if you think about where your money's going and then think about what you value in life, how aligned is that? And so, for example, if you have cable subscriptions and Netflix and everything else, I'm not advocating against that. I have those. However, if you're doing that and you travel all the time for work and you're barely watching TV, you don't value that. Do you need it? You'd be surprised at what you can cut out, and your life actually isn't sacrificed. And so what people found is there's really dead weight sometimes, or they're saying, well, gosh, I really hate not picking up the tab for my children. I'm 70 years old now. I still need to pick up the tab for my children. I tell them, look, your children love you. They're financially independent. It's okay to split the bill. You'd save a lot of money and you'd have a lot more freeing life just by working in agreement with them. So there's little items within a budget, but it stems back to what do you value? And then is your money going towards what you value? I think that's the most simple question to think about as you do that budget.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like it's like a lot of things. It's like cleaning out your closet. We hold on to a lot of things we haven't worn in a long time. So, and I think you're right. You can see what you value by looking at your numbers, and so that'll clue you in as to. I mean, if you go out to dinner all the time and that's just what you love, you can see that in your numbers. And so you have to just ask yourself the question about how important that really is, and as opposed to other things. And I think you will find that there are things that are really important and things that are there but not so important, and those aren't so hard to let go of. Then it doesn't feel like this huge restriction either. So yeah, excellent. Well, let's talk a little more about planning for the future, because we talked for a minute before the show, and this idea of we work uninterrupted for a certain amount of time and then we retire is clearly a myth. I mean, events like what we're going through right now will I mean, that's one of many. We had COVID, and then now we are having, a fire situation where a lot of people are going to lose their homes. So nothing is linear. And how do we really look? When you think about we're planning for the future, but there are little futures along the way. So how do we think about planning in a different way?
It seems overwhelming, right? I don't know what the future is, but I'm supposed to plan for it.
Yeah.
Like what gives here, and I get that. Yeah. What makes, I think, appreciating the fact that life is not linear should hopefully make it exciting instead of creating too much anxiety. Because if everything was spelled out for us, I don't think we would enjoy it as much as most people do. All that said, when you're planning for a fixed period of time that you don't know how fixed it is and how much it could cost theoretically, what do you do? So we have to start somewhere, and we have to understand, okay, what are my income sources that are guaranteed no matter what? What are my investments that is geared to, provide me a stream of income over the course of my life? And any other assets that I might have that is not geared for income purposes, like a home or anything else. We want to lay all the cards out right before retirement, if not much earlier than retirement, so we can figure out what it might look like ahead of time. And so we lay all the cards out, and then what I often like to do is recreate a paycheck for people. I might get Social Security over here, and I might get this investment income over here, and I'm drawing my distributions over here, and I'm recreating this paycheck that I'm used to. That often provides some peace of mind for people because we're so used to getting a paycheck over our working career. But it's not just the income game, because if life was fixed, that would be very easy. Okay, you're getting this, and it'll last 38 years, and as long as you don't pass away longer than that, you're fine. What we're talking about is the fact that life is not fixed or linear. And the phrase I use is we want to plan for our financial plan not going according to plan. A lot of plans in there. But we're accounting for room for error is really what we want to do. And so I force people in our plan to think about all things that could happen. And we know that those things probably aren't, but others like those are. Like a fire, like COVID, like a housing market crisis. These things will happen. I tell people, if you're 60 years old and right about to retire, here's one thing I can guarantee. There will be 4 to 6 more recessions over the course of your entire life. And some of them might be pretty ugly. And so we need to account for room for error. What does that look like? We need to make sure we have enough of a safety net. We need to stress test things against catastrophic events. We need to have the right insurance policies in place from a planning perspective. All these aspects to kind of guardrail as much as we can. And I'll use it with one caveat. If Armageddon happens, we're all in it together. But we can account for all these things. And really, the best phrase I use, I was a math and finance major way back when, so I can talk numbers all day long. But this is a human game. This is not just the numbers. The numbers is the foundation. But I love stress testing anything and saying, okay, even if this were to occur, here's what it means for you. There's the fear of the unknown for all of us. We are afraid of the unknown. Once we realize, it's bad news, James, but gosh, it really wasn't as bad as I thought. I'm still surviving. I'm still eating. I'm still having this. Okay. Now this is becoming a little more clear in my brain. And so lots of variables. That's where I geek out. That's where I think those that work with me lean on me for when these events can occur like we just experienced in California.
Yeah, thank you. I think, I love that mindset of, expect the unexpected, because I do think it's important. And the other event that was a big part of my life a few years ago that is now always in my mind is, while we're planning for retirement, how do you factor in planning for healthcare issues that might come up? I mean, that can wipe out your retirement in a minute. So how do you balance those things, and how do you think about those?
Yeah. So it's a myth that Medicare will take care of everything. It's just a myth. Medicare helps, but Medicare is not the be all end all. And so what most people are concerned about is long-term care. If my spouse passes away later in life, can I afford, if I needed, assisted living or home health care or something to that effect? There are insurance policies people can get. And these insurance policies, they've gotten a lot better than they were years ago in terms of combining it with things where you don't lose money anymore if you don't use it. Insurance isn't right for everybody. If you can self-fund, that's a risk you might want to take of, okay, if that happens, I might have this amount of money and how much would it cover? We run that. But long-term care insurance has become more and more popular because of the cost of healthcare. I mean, this numbers are pretty wild. 5% inflation rate on healthcare needs. You might not seem like a lot, but if you're 60 years old and you need it when you're 85, 5% for 25 years, that's triple, the amount that in terms of cost of today's dollar. So you really want to, again, have that plan and budget for it and look at all options. Moving out of state, some people do that because of other policies that they have. So you can get creative with it. But yes, healthcare is outside of running out of money, healthcare is the most important priority for retarees. And we get it.
Yeah, I never really, when you save for retirement, I do think you have kind of this view of it, you're saving to pay your bills, maybe travel a little bit, and you don't really. So I feel like it's you're saving for way more than that. And so does that mean you increase the amount, or what does that mean?
Yeah. So it does. I mean, you have to, there's a couple of big risks at retirement, not to be the bearer of bad news here, but big risks that people overlook. I'll probably start there and I'll let you ask me further to explain anything. I'll do my best to keep this simple, but inflation risk, people don't really realize, okay, I need $100,000 now. Well, when you're 80, that's going to be $200,000 and to feel like $100,000. So inflation risk is number one. If you're heavily invested in the stock market, the majority of your net worth, if that's heavily invested in the stock market, I'm a big fan of stock market investing, but you run into what's called sequence of returns risk, which is the fact that the market goes up and down. And in those really bad downtimes, if you need to live on that money, you're forced to sell at bad times, putting your portfolio down further. And then when the market does recover, you might not have as much to be able to recover with it. That's called sequence of returns risk. That's a big one. There's also these expense, unexpected expense risks, whether it's healthcare or new cars or additional insurance because of what just happened with COVID, right? The homeowners insurance skyrocketed. All these added extra costs. I mean, some of the fun ones is, I had grandchildren, I want to fund their college. Or, Christmas got way more expensive than I ever thought because my family's growing. All these, again, room for error. We want to build it into a sound financial plan and, again, stress test it to say, okay, what if taxes went up? So your income, you need more income because you got to pay more in taxes. And what if healthcare went up in inflation way more than we thought too? And what if Social Security changed a little bit? And what if all these events happen? What does that actually mean for you? And that's something where once you have that done, it might not be great news sometimes, but it might. Often what I found is it's better than what people think. Because again, they're just overwhelmed by all these variables. And what am I supposed to account for? Because I know life's not linear. But having that done and really realizing, okay, if I just do these three things, James is telling me these three things, he'll keep me posted along the way. Then I can breathe. That's the goal.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, that all does sound very daunting to even think about, let alone plan for. And since you understand the psychology of money, one of the things that came to my mind is we're talking about life not being linear and like every blip is about something negative or scary, but there are also the positive blips. Suddenly your business takes off or you inherit some money or so. again, a lot of this is dealing with it in your own mind so that you can engage. Otherwise, you really just want to go, this is too much for me. Like, it's all bad. So how do you address that? I'm sure you have clients who say to you, just stop talking. I can't handle it.
Yeah, exactly. So part of my job is to make the complex as simple as possible and know who my client is. And what I mean by know who my client is, I need to know what motivates you and what keeps you going. Because the math is one thing. If I just give someone a 20-page document, I hate giving out those planning documents because it's like homework. We're back in like college again. I got to read this thing. What is it? I don't even know what half these phrases are. This is financial jargon, right? And so I need to know who they are and what they care about. And I need them to trust me to do all my legwork, to look for all the scenarios, to your point, the good and the bad and everywhere in between, and say, look, here's my ask of you. If you do this, this, and this, these three things this year, that is a success. I will keep them posted on anything else that could happen that could go awry. But, the way I view myself is like a GPS system when you're planning a trip. So if you're kind of doing it on your own, you remember MapQuest?
Yeah.
Where MapQuest, you'd print out the document and it directed you, right? It's kind of like going to a financial calculator today. You're like, how much do I need to retire? Yeah. Put it in, plug and chug. Here we go. That's the MapQuest page, but that's static, right? And so what I've learned, what I feel so blessed to be able to help people with is they lean on me as their ongoing GPS system. And so they're planning the trip from California to Florida. They know they need to head east. The MapQuest has laid out roads, but construction happens. Rain happens. There's a detour. It got dark too early. Tire went out, right? All these things, that's where the GPS can help navigate and get them back on track. And I think that's something where not everybody needs a retirement financial advisor. I want to be clear on that. But if you feel like, gosh, all this is overwhelming, highly encourage you to lean on some form of coach.
Yeah.
Because that accountability is huge.
Yeah, thank you. I do think, and that circles back to the shame thing. I mean, just forget that. Whatever situation you're in, however much you're judging it, I mean, sitting down with somebody will give you a sense of relief around that too, because chances are that person isn't going to be as judgy as you are about your own situation. So, yeah, that's great. Now, what would you have to say to people who maybe, their biggest investment was their home and, everything they've ever saved for and acquired is now gone? How does one look at that in a positive way, if at all?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, outside of the money aspect with insurance, hopefully there's insurance that would help with that. The silver lining, perhaps, is it's a fresh start. I feel like I learn more from my retirees than they learn from me sometimes. I have people in their 80s and 90s today that have, quote unquote, simplified their life. They've downsized in home and they've had those garage sales that, get rid of everything because of health. They can't go upstairs anymore. It's just too much to handle. The kids are out of state now and have their own families and all that. What I can tell you, I've obviously not experienced this, but I listen very intently to those who have simplified their life. And what they've told me is, gosh, I wake up in the morning and I don't feel this over sense of responsibility for everything. And I just have this apartment that I'm living in and I have this, and this is just basic, not in a bad way. Mm-hmm. And so that's a potential silver lining for those of it's going to be a lot of change and that's tough, very tough. But it's the opportunity for a fresh start and what talk about evaluating your values and what you're grateful for. There was another stat I'll share. I can't remember the exact number, but the idea is if we have food that we can eat, if we have a hot shower that we can go to, and it doesn't have to be in our individual home, but it's just a hot shower we can go to, and we have clothes on our back, it's like we're top 3% in the world right now. And so I think we need to be grateful for what we do have, and use this as a chance to start a new chapter for ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that can be hard for people to hear, but I think it's very, very accurate. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine, one who lost her business, and we have had no gas or electricity, so we went to the gym to get a hot shower, because you do appreciate a hot shower very much. And we were just talking about, we know our lights are going to come back on. We know, our water is going to get cleaned up or whatever. But there are many people in the world who they're not waiting for that day. I mean, they have no idea, if that day will ever come. And so it does put things very, very much into perspective as far as what's important. And I think I'm a huge believer in gratitude anyway. So, if you can find, and of course you can find things to be grateful for. And I think the people who effectively move through this and get to the other side will be focused on that. So
yeah, and the communities are there. Oh yeah. Gosh, so many. And how many GoFundMes I've seen, and just so eager to donate right now, because not their fault, not your fault. This is just, it happens. Right.
So yeah, and for the people donating too, I think you realize, do I really need all that old furniture of my mom sitting in storage? I mean, I've been debating about what to do with that for like 2 years as I pay the storage fees, and now I've got my answer. I mean, there's no point in having a lot of this stuff that is actually costing us money just to hold on to. It's kind of silly. So
this is my math term, but you turn an asset into a liability sometimes when you hold on to it too long. It used to be really great, and now it becomes a liability. We have a rule in our house, and my wife will probably kill me for saying this, but if we haven't used it in 2 years, it's gone. It's just,
I might not like that one either. Certain purses and sweaters don't get used every year, but still. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, we spend a lot of our life maintaining things that really don't bring us a lot of value, actually. So that's another interesting lesson. So let's talk just for a minute about insurance. It's going to be a big, hot topic for a while. And, of course, the importance of making sure you're checking regularly to make sure that your insurance is updated and covers, what you have at different points. I know that was a problem in an earlier fire in Malibu where people, had been living in a home for 40 years and hadn't adjusted their insurance. Any advice for people on that?
Yeah, I'd say that the most general but very pointed advice at the same time is make sure you know what your insurance covers. I know this is we're talking about an after-the-fact event, of course, and we already have insurance for those affected in California right now. But we tend to ignore insurance in general as a society. It's like, I know I'm supposed to get car insurance and homeowners insurance and all these other types, but once you kind of get it, then you don't think about it again. And make sure you know what it covers, especially because as life changes, you might need more insurance, some life insurance if you have kids, because God forbid something happens, are they taken care of, and all these other components. I've talked to so many people that they just say, yeah, I've got it, it's good. And then I look at it and I'm like, actually, did you realize that if that were to occur and this were to happen and the flood, then the house is not covered. And so just make sure you know what you have. I don't know what will shake out from the California fires and how those insurance companies will proceed with it. I know that there's a lot of people working on it right now. My personal sister, a smaller scale event, but we had tornadoes. That's probably the one weather problem we have in the Midwest is tornadoes can occur. And she was hit earlier last year in the spring.
Wow.
And she just stayed on it. And she was part of a list. Half their house, I shouldn't say half, about a quarter of their house was taken from it. And, they paid it out. It just, you got to be patient. That's hard to do, especially when your entire world just got turned upside down. But stay on them and make sure you're part of that. And kind of get, when you have a group together with these insurance of I'm affected in, all the same company, that helps too. I've learned that. So hopefully that helps for those listening.
Yeah, that was helpful. And that's pretty terrifying too. Tornadoes sound incredibly scary to me. So yeah, wow. Well, there's, this whole world of finding, financial peace, if you can kind of summarize it, because we've talked about a lot of different parts, for people, if your goal is to help somebody find financial peace, it might be a little redundant, but what would you tell people, like how to kind of formulate this plan?
Yeah. So probably the simplest way to put defining financial peace in my mind is from a mentality standpoint, every time that individual thinks about money and uses money, it doesn't come with any level of stress or anxiety. If we rethink the purpose of money as nothing more than fuel to get us to accomplish what we want in life, our life's purpose, which that's a whole another topic of conversation, but have that as fuel and nothing more, often the peace then sets aside. And so finding financial peace, how do we get there to be able to have that feeling? Well, that's to make sure you have a financial plan. It doesn't have to be crazy complex, but as you get older, it should be, because life becomes more complex as we obtain money. And then we have somebody who can look for all the problems that could persist that we've never thought of, no fault of our own. We don't know what we don't know. They can share that with us. We can be at peace with that because of all the guardrails that person has helped us put in place. And then we can furthermore just live the life we want without having to worry about the money aspect. And I think that when you have that person, there's a lot of them out there. They come in various forms: consultants, coaches, advisors, husbands, wives, right? That know what they're doing. If you have that person to help protect you along the way and literally walk side by side with you, that is huge. And so financial plan, guardrails, all that, absolutely important.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And I love that you help people believe that it's attainable, because I think a lot of it is belief. And so if you believe that finances are just chronic stress and there's nothing that is ever going to be peaceful about them, that's a mindset that needs to be shifted, because
you can't take it with you, the money. You can't take it with you.
And I love the fuel analogy, because that really is what it is. And, we don't fill up our car with fuel and then freak out until the next, filling. We just use it and we understand we'll go back and get more. It's a really good analogy, actually. So, and we can manage it. We can manage it by driving less or whatever. So I think it's a good analogy. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, please tell our audience about your podcast and other ways that, you put information out there or people can connect with you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So my partner and I at Edge Financial, we're located in the Chicagoland area. We're in a suburb called Wheaton, Illinois. We've been doing a podcast about 3 years. It's called Ed's Edge, a little tongue twister there. Our purpose is to give back and educate, nothing more around that podcast. We added a little spin where we'll talk about certain topics that people need to think about, many of which we've talked about just today. But we dig in a little bit and we provide a spin of, we want to educate around these topics of which can't just be Googled by definition of what is long-term care insurance. Mm-hmm. We want to talk about stories and experiences and feelings, because that's actually what's important, not the numbers. And so anyways, the podcast is on our website, which is edgefa.com. You can find it right there under Ed's Edge at the top right. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, and as a financial planner, do you serve people outside of Illinois?
I do, yes. Would more than welcome an opportunity to talk with anyone. I'm licensed in all 50 states, so technology is a powerful thing. You can help from afar. Yeah,
that's great. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. I think this was a really helpful conversation. I love that you have a podcast. I personally think for people who haven't learned a lot about money, reading books has always been there and it's great, but I think listening to good podcasts around money is a great way and a more fun way, actually, to educate yourself. And then if you have areas of interest, you can go get a little more in depth with the books out there. But I think it's really admirable that you're using it as a platform to educate people, because it's effective.
Well, sure. Right back at you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. I loved having you on the show. I'm so happy that you were able to join us. Great. Your first show of 2025 that's new. So thank you so much. And keep doing the great work that you do, and appreciate everything. And audience, thank you so much for being here. I hope you will, maybe find some peace by listening to podcasts and helping yourself, make your own plan of how to get up and running if that's what you need to do, getting back on your feet. Or if not, it's for everybody. So everybody needs financial education. Everybody needs to keep upgrading themselves in terms of what they know and how they implement it. So thank you so much for listening. You can reach out to me at michelle@limitfreelife.com. And you can certainly sign up for my newsletter on my website, limitfreelife.com, and look forward to having you as part of the community and continue to offer more education that way as well. Okay, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.